Jingle Hunter came up to me and said, "Can we put up just a few Christmas decorations in the Bastion?" And I said, "Sure." And this is what happened. Hello, everyone. Bront CatHerder here, and we're having a festive time talking Raid Shadow Legends. Yes, it is that time of year where Polarium goes absolutely nuts with the Bastion, and honestly, I love it. It's over the top, and it's over the top in every way that is good for a game to just go over the top. So this is kind of cool, and I appreciate it's not just the same thing they've rolled out a couple times previously. This match is more of how nuts they went with Halloween, and I would love for them to do this for a few other holidays, although, again, there's not a lot of international holidays out there that is celebrated by so many people all over the world. But that's not what we're really here to talk about. We are here to talk about AI and programming your champions. Your champions, if you are not aware of this, are absolutely dumb. Polarium has made them some of the dumbest champions you could ever have. And it's not just you, it's everybody. The AI has very specific priorities. The AIs were set, for the most part, not very well. There's a couple of champions that are very specific exceptions. Coldheart is one of the best exceptions. For example, Coldheart will automatically prioritize her A3, but not when the Fire Knight's shield is up. She is the only champion that has a dungeon-specific AI programming to avoid using one of her skills. And even then, it's still not perfect because she will still do her A2 if you don't turn it off. But you can program your champions a lot better than Raid has. And I'm going to show you a couple of examples of things that you may not be aware of how things are prioritized, as well as what the difference is between a prioritized team and a not prioritized team. So we're going to head into Doom Tower, where we can do some testing on a couple of champions, just to show a few examples of champions that really don't know what they're doing. All right, so we are here on floor 1 of Hard Doom Tower to show off a wonderful team here that is really not designed to be a team, but just to kind of show off how some of these champions are absolutely idiotic about what they do as far as presets are concerned. We've got Kymar here, who is fairly famous for his reset, as well as his ability to sleep other people and remove buffs. We've got Duchess, who of course has all the veils, as well as an AoE revive. And we've got Carnage, who is just kind of an example of mythicals. Obviously, his programming is going to be specific to Carnage, but it over highlights a problem that mythicals are going to have in general. So what are the problems we're going to find here? Well, Kymar doesn't necessarily know when he should use his skills. Duchess seems to not know when to use her skills. And Carnage here doesn't know when to transform and when not to transform. His first form is a single target attacking, and we're looking at wave clear. So we want him to transform and use his AoEs to clear the floors. So we're going to test each one of these out individually. The reason I just went into this screen here is so that we're back in 1x speed and auto, so I can just walk through it pretty quickly. So we're going to hit replay here. So we are not in auto at the moment, and we're on 1x speed just to show this here. I'm going to A1 with Duchess, because what I need is I need these people to attack and kill these two food champions right here. Carnage, I'll just have you A1. All right. First of all, so Duchess is A1, Carnage is A1, nobody has used a skill yet. So if I hit auto, Kymar is going to reset everybody. Now there is a 30% turn meter on that, so that makes a little bit of sense. But it would be absolutely nice if he realized that nobody had a skill on cooldown, he would then instead do his AoE control and buff strip. So, all right, now we're in Duchess here. Duchess, now there's somebody dead. So Duchess, you should do your revive, right? Nope. She instead does her Shroud of Souls, putting everyone under veil. Now, I can understand that being an option in some cases, but the fact that she will always do this makes her annoying, especially if you're using her unprogrammed on defense. So what I'm going to do here is I am going to let this run, and we're going to see how what Carnage does until he's ready to transform. So Carnage does his A3. Carnage does his A2. Okay, we now have a ton of buffs, debuffs up there, and Carnage does his A1. Doesn't transform, so he can use his other skills. He does his A1. And continues to do his A1. Well, this is counterattacking. But regardless, Carnage doesn't know when to change. Duchess doesn't know when to revive versus when to use her Shroud of Souls. If there are 4 people dead on the team, she will still just use her Shroud of Souls. If everyone has block buffs, she will still use her Shroud of Souls. Some of this I understand because the AI is not necessarily designed to be the smartest thing in the world. And meanwhile, Carnage here is using his A1 rather than transform into his AoE that would have had this wave done well ahead of time. So these are not the only examples from this, and we can stop this battle here. But these are some good examples of what you want to pay attention to. There are several revivers that don't prioritize their revive properly. On top of that, there are a couple of revivers that if they can revive, but also can use that revive when there's not a revival out there, will often do that revive as the first thing when that's not necessarily the best option. So let's go put up the other team and I can show off a little bit of that. All right, so we've got Mighty Uko and Raka here. They're another good example of they both have revives that they can use even when nobody is there to revive. So if we start this auto climb, it starts on auto. Mighty Uko immediately does his Uko's Mercy, which is the revive. He's actually fast enough because he's the only one that has gear to then do his A2, which is fine. Apparently Raka may be too slow for this example because I don't have any gear on her. So she does her revive. That's good. The problem is she would have done that even if he didn't have anybody that was dead. So that is clearly a bit of a problem with the way this AI works as well. So just be aware, especially if the champion can use a revive that you don't want them to use, that there's a chance that they may use that revive in situations you don't want them to use it in, either because they're stupid, or in some cases, the AI is not programmed to use the revive at the right time because they're prioritizing some other skill. So what other skills do we have? Let's go take a look at a couple champions that may have similar problems just because of the skills they have set up. So here's another example of the AI possibly being dumb, possibly not, but knowing it lets you use it properly. Now, this team here relies on Paragon placing Unkillable on Gnarlhorn. Now, in this particular case, the reason Gnarlhorn is in the lead is Paragon will always, with the AI, put it on the middle champion, the first champion, however you want to describe it, the first person in the order of the champions, he will make unkillable as long as they don't have unkillable on them in the first place. So there's 2 problems with that. One, that means that you have to make sure that Gnarlhorn does not have unkillable on himself so that Paragon doesn't put it on somebody else. And 2, it means Paragon does not necessarily put it on the person that is most at risk. He'll just put it on a specific person. And if he misses the one person, he'll put it on the next person in line, in this case, Mithrala. So you have to build your teams with that in mind, knowing he will tend to target the person that's in the middle. For single target things, for things that happen on a single target, they tend to aim for the middle first. Now, there's a couple of exceptions for that. Single target heals will tend to often aim for the lowest HP, which is actually what you want. Single target cleanses will tend to aim for whoever has the most debuffs, which again is probably what you want. Not always, particularly if there's other things involved too. For example, like cleanse may also have a turn meter boost and a buff, and maybe you want that buff to go on somebody specific and the team is based around that. Well, if somebody else gets debuffed and that person gets cleansed and they get those buffs, that could ruin your team. So the AI is definitely not reliable as far as this is concerned. This actually goes for the other way around as well. When targeting mobs on the floor, your team doesn't always know what to do. In Arena, for example, quite often you will target the lead champion for a lot of the things that you might do. That means that your champions may end up ally attacking into somebody in Stone Skin because the AI doesn't quite understand what to do about it. This is something that both could be a problem if you have a defense set to rely on that, but also can be to your advantage if you know that if somebody didn't set their AI right, you can use that to your advantage. So Learning a little bit of the ins and outs of the AI definitely helps. Keep in mind that for the most part, champions will tend to prioritize targets based off of who's in the lead, as in the first champion, the second champion, the third champion in the order on both sides. They will often tend to look for affinity when they are targeting. So if there's somebody has a bad affinity and the next champion is a better affinity, they will sometimes move to that. Some champions know to ignore Stone Skin, some do not. And some champions that ignore Stone Skin don't necessarily know to attack somebody with Stone Skin specifically to make sure you get them out of it. Overall, be aware of targeting, both on the friendly side and on the enemy side. Venus is actually a pretty good example of this not playing out as well as it could, and it's just the way that the IA prioritizes debuffs. Now, she's got a decreased defense and a weaken, and she's got an HP burn. The way that she ends up prioritizing it, and she generally prioritizes the decreased defense and weaken. The problem is she doesn't know when to not prioritize them. So say you're fighting Hydra, and 3 of the 4 heads have decreased defense and weaken, but one of them doesn't have just decreased defense. She will use this skill to get decreased defense and weaken on all of the champions, even if they don't have HP burn, which is her other debuff. Generally, champions that have decreased defense and something else will prioritize putting decreased defense out there regardless of whether or not they're even built for it, and regardless of what they're built for. Another good example is actually Vlad. Let's go find Vlad. So Vlad has a decreased defense and block active skills on his A3, which, by the way, might be good for the new Hydra boss, or the new Chimera boss, or whatever it is. I haven't had a chance to test any of that stuff out yet. I am looking forward to that, by the way. So this is not a bad skill. This is actually a very good skill and makes some sense for him to possibly lead off with. However, he also has a turn meter steal and or drop on his A2. And in some cases, because it could be a steal, he may rather use this, take the extra turn, and then put decreased defense out there instead, rather than put the decreased defense out there and let everyone get a turn before he gets back around to himself again. There is some nuance to this, so I understand why the AI isn't perfect for this. But if you're having him do solo wave clear, if you don't prioritize the A2, which on a solo team is certainly more important than the A3, because you might not care about the defense, because you may have enough ignore defense in other ways that you'll just kill people anyway. So just be aware that the AI is absolutely dumb, doesn't know how to prioritize skills properly in some cases. We will, however, put one that actually does do very well. We've got Arbiter here, and fortunately, Arbiter is generally fairly smart. Now, Arbiter has this, her turn meter buff and increase attack. She also has a turn meter boost that also revives a bunch of people. Her AI will generally use this first unless there are people that are dead. And if there are people that are dead, she will then do this skill, which makes sense because this grants an extra turn if an ally was successfully revived. So Arbiter actually is intelligent about how she uses these two skills. That said, she will do this skill first. She will do this skill second. She will then do her attacks all enemies and possibly decrease the duration of all enemy buffs. She will not save this to revive somebody if left to her own either. That's fine, and unfortunately that is difficult to program for, because if you program her, then she will absolutely do whatever you have programmed for her and not the right turn meter boost in the first place. So Arbiter is actually a case where you're generally better off not programming her, because the AI is smart enough to have some level of nuance on which of these turn meter boosts to use when. And since you're going to have trouble saving that revive anyway, then just let her use the revive as her second turn meter boost. And that's still got some value in Arena or wherever else you're going to use it. So it really will depend on what the champion does. And sometimes this is only something you can find out by actually running them through some dungeons, testing it out, and seeing what they do. Arena is a great way to see what they tend to prioritize. But it is one extra thing as to why setting the AI can be super important, and knowing which champions work and which champions don't is very important. Armand's is actually a very, very good example of one of the dumbest AIs I've seen. Armand's has this wonderful turn meter steal and puts enemies under sleep. Armand's has this wonderful turn meter steal and stuns a bunch of people. He doesn't steal turn meter of enemies under sheep. However, if a single champion is under stone skin, he will instead do his A3. Now, if all 4 of them are under stone skin, his A3 makes some sense. But if only one champion is in stone skin, I would rather lock out 3 of those 4 champions in most cases, get the extra turn because he's going to steal enough turn meter to get that extra turn, and then sheep the one under stone skin so I don't have to worry about it. Armand's is dumb. On top of that, it's even worse. If I shut this off on an arena defense, for example, and he runs against somebody with stone skin, he will not do this skill. So he will instead A1 rather than do this skill if I have a champion with stone skin and he's set to simply just not do his A3 on defense. So you need to prioritize this skill if you want him to use it on auto, or else he will regularly not use it, particularly in arena. Just very, very frustrating. Now, ultimately, I do understand that there's some level of the AI that there's some value judgments that players have to make. And that's the difference between choosing to do something on auto and do something manually. But there's also some level of this AI is absolutely stupid, and it would be nice to be able to program it a little bit better. Another good example of well, let's go into the programming and talk about things that Polarium could possibly do to help us program our champions just a little bit better. Okay, so we're going to look at my Clan Boss team here for just a little bit, just because Clan Boss is actually a really good example of teams that could use slightly better AI programming. First of all, Dracomorph is, for example, he will do this decreased defense and weaken, but he won't do it if the Clan Boss already has decreased defense and weaken up, which would be great other than the fact that if you don't program it as the #1 priority, he'll often still do his Poison Jaws instead of this. And what happens is decreased defense and weaken can start to fall off occasionally, and you end up losing a lot of damage. It's annoying because he doesn't actually hit with this, so he doesn't actually do damage with this particular skill. Draco's still an amazing damage dealer for Clan Boss, so don't think this says that he's not. He's still one of the best. He's a GOAT. But you just need to program this, and if you don't program this, what will happen is decreased defense and weaken will fall off occasionally until Draco takes a turn, which means you can have everybody else hitting before Draco hits, and you don't have decreased defense and weaken, and that can actually drop several million damage off of your team over the course of 50 turns, especially when you're going to be taking 2 attacks every round. So another good example here is we have Maneater here. So we've got this one programmed for this is the thing he needs to do first. We've got this one where this is the thing he needs to do first, but then this is the secondary programming. Here's the problem is sometimes I need to be able to do something along the lines of I need to do this first, this second, and then this third, because I need to delay this by 2 turns, but I need this to be the high priority because I can't have him doing this siphon if both of these are off cooldown. I need the Ancient Blood. It would be really nice if we had an option to have a secondary thing to do. So opener, second action, and then auto. I know it's asking a little bit for Polarium, but it would be absolutely really nice to be able to do this. Now we're here on my Fire Knight team, mostly to show Lady Mikage, and this is one of the other problems that I've seen, and this is more of a mythical problem to be fair. But say, for example, I wanted to have Mikage in round 3 do this Imperial Decree, and I want it to be the high priority, but I don't want her to lead off with it on the first turn, even though I need her in this form. Well, I either need to do, if she's going to come in on this form, and I know she's going to come in this form, I either need to do my opener on this form, or there's no other option. If I put this as my opener, but she is in the other form, she will not do that because it's already not her first action when she transforms back into the other form. So as a result, I cannot delay this if she's in this form by 1 turn without having her do something along the lines of doing this attack and then next time metamorphing and then doing this Imperial Decree. That may not sound like a major problem from a programming standpoint, but what that does is if I have a buff such as increased speed on her, That's an extra turn of that falling off, possibly changing how fast she's going to go, losing out on 30% increased speed for one turn, just because I cannot program her properly. And that's a problem. So Polarium can do something to help fix this as well. One more thing I want to do, so let's go hop over into Hydra. So this is my brutal Hydra team, and I've got a couple of things set in here for particular reasons. Now, one of the things I've got with the Thorian Wallmaster here is I have him prioritizing his Falcon shot to get that off, and then I have him doing his... Ooh, I didn't have that booked all the way. That's interesting. I didn't know that. I have this here set to happen second, because what I want to have happen is I want him to fire this off. It's a 3-turn cooldown. Then he'll do this. It's extra turn, and he'll get the Falcon shot off that many times more often. Plus, the way Falcon shot ends up working, the extra increase attack doesn't really help quite as much with Falcon shot as it does with his A1. And I'd rather get Falcon shot off more often just because of the raw damage, even if I'm losing a little bit of damage with that increase attack. Now, this works great for a Thorian just because of the way his multipliers work. This does not work quite as well for somebody like Marius. Marius really does need the extra defense to really smack with that triple hitter of his. But it's an interesting option, and I found that this adds some more damage. Venus isn't programmed here. Ostrid, I make sure she does her A1 and then her A2, particularly because I have found that she does not like to do this, even though it grants an extra turn, so she's not losing out on anything, if everyone has increased speed already. Again, another champion that's not quite the brightest in the world, and that's how annoying with her too, because she heals based off of this turn meter boost. So I prioritize these two, and because she's in Relentless gear, and she's got abilities to occasionally get cooldowns dropped because of some of the gear that she's got, and some of the masteries, occasionally she'll get this back faster than she might otherwise normally. Michinaki prioritizes decreased defense over Hex. I want him to prioritize Hex, partially because this is also a buff strip as well, so he cleans off things that might get stolen, particularly if I have block buffs up or something like that, gets rid of reflect damage. It makes the run a lot safer. It gets Hex up more often, which sure does a lot of damage. Yes, decreased defense and decreased attack are important, but we get those up in other ways as well. Molly, generally want her to revive over her provoke. That's not really particularly exciting. I have these set just in case. Molly actually will do this revive over her provoke. She's not super dumb, which is great, particularly because this provoke could get her killed in normal content, whereas the revive is what you want. And then Shamael only has one ability. He uses it whenever he can. He actually doesn't need to have it programmed. That's great. He will always do this whenever he can, all the time, so you never need to program that. So, that said, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take this team, and we'll just get rid of Venus here and put her back in. And we are going to run this team without pre-programming, and then we're going to run this with programming. And I want you to take a look and see the differences in damage that programming can make for your Hydra auto teams. So let's get to it. All right, so admittedly, this is a sample of one run, but in this one run here, we did 100 million damage, 102 million damage. This team usually does between 200 million and 300 million when programmed properly. At least I think I had a personal best of 300 last time I was running it. So this is unprogrammed. Clearly that is a bit of a problem. So let's try the programmed run and see how much more damage I can do when these guys do exactly what I tell them to do. Well, programming certainly had a pretty huge effect on how much damage this team did. I suspect a lot of it is Ostrid not using her A3 as often as she probably should to heal everybody, because definitely the healing was certainly important. But the additional damage that a Thorian does just by changing the order of his A2 and A3 is pretty huge as well. And honestly, I think the fact that we get Hex out a little more often makes Michinaki that much more useful, particularly because we don't need the decreased defense as much because we have Venus already covering that as well. Now, I mentioned previously that I did not have a Thorian fully booked. I did book that final skill before I ran both of these, so he was fully booked in both of these, at least fully booked on that A3. His A1 still not fully booked, and that's fine. This is a lot of damage. This is, in fact, my personal best. This went all the way to 1,000 turns, unlike the previous team, which died early. And that is kind of huge. So if that doesn't point to how important it is for you to program your champions, I don't know what would. I appreciate you guys hanging around. It has been awesome spending time with you. If you like this video and appreciate the type of videos I'm making here, hit like, smash that subscribe button. I definitely appreciate it. I feel all the love. I appreciate you guys hanging around out here. I usually stream Tuesday and Thursday on Twitch, as well as CatHerder, aka Saturday. So come on, join me there, have some fun. I've got merch links down below if you want to buy some Bront CatHerder merch. You can support me on Discord. You can find me there. And in fact, Raid has chosen to actually sponsor me. So I will leave my Raid Shadow Legends affiliate link down below. So if you want to start an account and help support me that way as well, go check that out. I'll probably actually do a video on the early game as well and see what we can do with that. So appreciate you guys hanging around. You guys have a wonderful, wonderful holiday and wonderful day. And until the next video, I'm Bront CatHerder.